the making of a free people. The founding of the United States of America brought scientific, cultural, and religious changes to the world as we know it. But without history flowing as it did, there would be no United States at all. Every nation rises from earlier ages, shaped by the people, conflicts, and ideas that came before it. I want to go back in history and talk about some of the important events that have made modern history as it is. One chapter per event, and we'll talk about its importance and why it matters.
I'll upload chapter 1
soon. The council that changed Christianity. In the early 4th century, the Roman Empire was a world under strained civil wars. Economic troubles and political uncertainty had weakened the empire that once ruled the known world. People were searching for stability and meaning, and Christianity, though still young, was spreading rapidly across many cultures and languages. It was not yet a unified faith. It was a collection of communities, each trying to follow Christ with the understanding they had. Persecution had shaped these early believers. Some leaders were sincere and courageous, preserving what truth they could in difficult circumstances. Others were less noble, driven by ambition or personal influence. Like every age of Christianity, it was a mixture of light and human weakness. Yet through all of it, faith in Christ survived and grew. When Constantine rose to power, he saw Christianity differently from the emperors before him. He believed it could help unify the empire, which had been torn apart by conflict. In 313 AD, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting Christians the freedom to worship openly. For the first time, Christianity was no longer an illegal religion. But with freedom came a new challenge. Christians did not all agree on what they believed. Across the empire, bishops taught different ideas about the nature of Christ. The most serious disagreement came from a priest named Arius, who taught that Christ was created, and therefore not equal to God the Father. Others believed Christ was eternal and fully divine. The debate spread quickly and caused division among believers. Constantine feared that religious conflict would lead to political instability, something the empire could not afford. To address the issue, Constantine called for a council of bishops to meet in the city of Nicosia in 325 AD. It was the first gathering of its kind. Around 300 bishops traveled from across the empire to discuss the matter. Constantine attended parts of the council, urging unity and peace. He was not a theologian, but he believed that a divided church would lead to a divided empire. After weeks of discussion, the council rejected the teachings of Arius and affirmed that Christ was of one substance with the Father. This statement became known as the Nicene Creed. It did not settle every question, but it established a standard for Christian belief that would influence the future of the faith. Constantine's involvement in the council marked a turning point. For the first time, an emperor had stepped directly into a religious debate and influenced the outcome. This set a pattern that would continue for centuries. Political leaders involving themselves in church matters, and church leaders gaining political influence in return. Some leaders used this influence wisely, others did not. But through both the good and the flawed, Christianity continued to survive. As the Western Roman Empire weakened and eventually collapsed, the Bishop of Rome became one of the few stable authorities left in the region. His influence grew, and over time, the office became known as the papacy. The Council of Nicosia did not create the Pope, but it helped establish the structure and authority that made the papacy possible. The decisions made at Nicosia shaped the direction of Christianity, influenced the development of European society, and affected the course of Western history. This single event, born out of conflict, faith, and political necessity, helped form the religious landscape that would shape nations, cultures, and ideas for centuries to come.
Chapter 2. The rise of English identity. When Rome withdrew its legions from Britain in the early 5th century, the island was left to govern itself. For the first time in centuries, Roman towns, roads, and customs remained. But the political structure that had held Britain together was gone. Local leaders, warlords, and small kingdoms emerged in its place. There was no single British identity, only scattered communities trying to survive in a changing world. Into this uncertainty came new groups from across the North Sea. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes arrived in waves, first as hired soldiers and later as settlers. They brought their own languages, customs, and traditions. Over time, these groups established their own territories, forming the early English kingdoms of Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, Kent, and others. Each kingdom had its own rulers and its own way of life, but they shared a common cultural foundation that would eventually become the English identity. The language these settlers spoke became the root of what we now call English. It was simple, direct, and practical, shaped by the daily lives of farmers, warriors, and craftsmen. This early form of English would later absorb words from Latin, Norse, and French, but its foundation was laid during this period. Without these early settlers, the English language, as we know it, would not exist. Christianity returned to Britain during this time as well. Missionaries from Rome and Ireland traveled across the island. Teaching and baptizing, their work was slow and often difficult. But it gradually took hold. Monasteries became centers of learning, preserving scripture and teaching literacy. The blending of Christian belief with local customs created a unique religious culture that would shape English society for centuries. These early centuries were not peaceful. The kingdoms fought one another for land and influence. Alliances shifted, borders changed, and leaders rose and fell. Yet through all the conflict, something new was forming. A shared language, shared customs, and shared beliefs began to unite the people of the island. The idea of the English slowly took shape. This period matters because it laid the foundation for everything that followed. The English language, English law, and English culture all began here. The later events that shaped the modern world, such as the Norman Conquest, Magna Carta, the English Bible, the Reformation, and the colonization of America, were only possible because of the identity formed in these early centuries. The rise of English identity was not a single event, but a long process. It grew out of migration, conflict, faith, and adaptation. It created a people who would play a central role in shaping the Western world. And it set the stage for the next turning point in our story. The arrival of a new power that would transform England and influence the course of history for generations. Chapter 3. The Norman Conquest. In the middle of the 11th century, England was a land of competing claims and uneasy alliances. The early English kingdoms had grown into a single nation, but unity did not guarantee stability. When King Edward the Confessor died in 1066 without an heir, several powerful leaders believed they had the right to succeed him. Among them was William, Duke of Normandy, a determined ruler from across the English Channel. William claimed that Edward had promised him the throne years earlier.
He also argued that Harold Godwinson, the English noble who took the crown, had sworn an oath to support William's claim. Whether these promises were genuine or political stories, William believed he had both a legal and moral right to rule England. He gathered an army, secured support from the church, and prepared to cross the Channel. In September of 1066, William landed in southern England with thousands of soldiers. Harold marched his army south to meet him, having just fought off a Viking invasion in the north. The two forces met at the Battle of Hastings. It was a long and difficult fight, but by the end of the day, Harold was dead and William stood victorious. His victory changed the course of English history. William became known as William the Conqueror, and he set out to reshape England in ways that would last for centuries. He replaced many of the English nobles with Norman lords who were loyal to him. He introduced new systems of land ownership, new forms of military organization, and new structures of government. The Normans built castles across the country to secure their control and protect against rebellion. One of the most lasting changes came through language. The Normans spoke a form of French, and for generations the ruling class used French in government, law, and culture. The common people continued to speak English, but the two languages blended over time. This mixture created a richer, more flexible language that would eventually become modern English. Many of the words used in law, government, and literature today trace back to this period. The church also changed under Norman influence. New bishops were appointed, monasteries were reorganized, and church buildings were rebuilt in the Norman style. These changes strengthened ties between England and the rest of Europe, bringing new ideas, new learning, and new cultural influences. The Norman conquest matters because it transformed England from a collection of early medieval traditions into a more centralized and connected kingdom. It reshaped the language, laws, and culture of the nation. It set the stage for later developments such as Magna Carta, the growth of Parliament, and the English legal system. These institutions would eventually influence the colonies in America and the founding principles of the United States. The events of 1166 were not just a change of rulers. They were a turning point that redirected the future of an entire people. The blending of Norman and English traditions created a new identity, one that would shape the Western world for centuries. The story of modern history cannot be told without the moment when a determined Duke crossed the Channel and changed England forever.
Chapter 4. Magna Carta. By the early 13th century, England had become a stronger and more organized kingdom than it had been in the centuries after the Norman conquest. And English traditions had blended into a single culture, and the kings of England held more power than ever before. But power, when pushed too far, often creates resistance. That resistance came during the reign of King John. John inherited the throne in 1199, but his rule was troubled from the beginning. He lost important territories in France, demanded heavy taxes to fund his military campaigns, and often acted without consulting his nobles. Many of his decisions were seen as unfair or arbitrary. The barons, who were powerful landowners, grew increasingly frustrated. They believed the king was ignoring long-standing customs that protected their rights. Tension reached a breaking point in 1215. A group of barons confronted John and demanded that he agree to a list of principles that would limit his authority. They wanted the king to recognize that his power had boundaries and that he was subject to the law just as they were. After months of pressure, John met the barons at a meadow called Runnymede and agreed to their terms. The document they produced became known as Magna Carta, or the Great Charter. Magna Carta was not a declaration of universal freedom. It was a practical agreement between a king and his nobles. But it contained ideas that would echo through history. It stated that the king could not impose taxes without the consent of his council. It affirmed that no free person could be imprisoned or punished without a fair trial. It insisted that justice could not be sold or denied. These principles were simple, but they challenged the idea that a ruler's power was absolute. Although John tried to break his promises soon after signing the charter, the ideas within it could not be undone. Later kings reissued Magna Carta, and over time it became a symbol of the rule of law. It influenced the development of Parliament, strengthened the idea of individual rights, and shaped the legal traditions that spread throughout the English-speaking world. Magna Carta matters because it introduced a new understanding of government. It suggested that authority must be balanced, that leaders must be accountable, and that the law stands above any single person. These ideas would influence the English Civil War, the Glorious Revolution, and the political thought of the Enlightenment. They would cross the Atlantic with the colonists and help shape the founding documents of the United States. The meadow at Runnymede was not the end of tyranny, nor was it the beginning of modern democracy. But it was a turning point. It marked the moment when the people of England insisted that power must have limits. It set a precedent that would grow stronger with each generation, and it helped create the political world that would eventually shape the modern age.
Chapter 5. The Renaissance and the Reformation. By the 14th century, Europe was changing in ways that would reshape the world. After centuries of war, plague, and political struggle, new ideas began to spread across the continent. Scholars, artists, and thinkers looked back to the learning of ancient Greece and Rome and found inspiration in the past. This movement became known as the Renaissance, a word meaning rebirth. It was not a single event, but a gradual shift in the way people thought about knowledge, art, and the world around them. The Renaissance encouraged curiosity. Scholars studied old manuscripts, questioned long-held assumptions, and explored new fields of science and mathematics. Artists developed new techniques that brought depth and realism to their work. Inventors experimented with new tools and technologies. One of the most important developments was the invention of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in the mid-15th century. Books that once had to be copied by hand could now be produced quickly and in large numbers. Knowledge became more accessible, and literacy began to spread. As people gained access to more information, they also began to think more independently. This shift in thinking set the stage for another major turning point: the Reformation. For centuries, the Church had been the central religious and cultural authority in Europe. It provided spiritual guidance, preserved learning, and shaped daily life. But it also faced criticism. Some leaders lived in wealth and power, far removed from the teachings of Christ. Others were sincere and devoted, doing their best to serve their communities. Like every age of Christianity, it was a mixture of good and bad. In the early 16th century, a German monk named Martin Luther raised concerns about practices he believed were harmful or misleading. His intention was to encourage reform within the church, not to divide it. But once his ideas were printed and circulated, they spread quickly. People across Europe began to question traditions, examine scripture for themselves, and seek a more personal connection to God. Other reformers emerged in different regions, each with their own ideas about faith and worship. The Reformation led to significant changes. New Christian denominations formed. The Bible was translated into local languages, so people could read it for themselves. Debates about authority, scripture, and conscience reshaped religious life.
These changes were not peaceful. Europe faced decades of conflict as nations and communities struggled to define their beliefs. Yet through the turmoil, important ideas took root. The value of individual conscience, the importance of scripture, and the belief that faith should be sincere rather than forced. The Renaissance and the Reformation matter because they transformed the intellectual and spiritual landscape of Europe. They encouraged learning, expanded literacy, and challenged people to think for themselves. They weakened the idea that authority should go unquestioned and strengthened the idea that individuals have the right to seek truth. These ideas would influence the Enlightenment, the rise of democratic thought, and the founding principles of the United States. Together, these movements helped create a world where knowledge could spread freely, and where people could explore faith with greater independence. They prepared the way for the modern age and set the stage for the next turning point in our story: the rise of reason and the birth of new political ideas that would reshape nations.
Chapter 6. The Enlightenment. By the 17th century, Europe had been shaped by centuries of conflict, discovery, and religious change. The Renaissance had encouraged learning and curiosity. The Reformation had challenged long-held traditions and emphasized individual conscience. These movements created an environment where people began to ask deeper questions about government, science, and human nature. This period of new thinking became known as the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was not a single movement or a unified group of thinkers. It was a broad shift in the way people approached knowledge. Philosophers, scientists, and writers believed that reason could help solve problems that had troubled societies for generations. They studied nature, questioned political authority, and explored ideas about human rights. Their work did not reject faith, but it encouraged people to examine the world through observation, logic, and evidence. Scientific discoveries played a major role in this new way of thinking. Figures like Isaac Newton showed that the natural world followed consistent laws that could be understood and described. These discoveries inspired others to believe that human society might also be improved through careful study and thoughtful reform. Writers such as John Locke argued that government should protect the natural rights of individuals. Others explored ideas about freedom, equality, and the responsibilities of rulers. These ideas spread quickly through books, pamphlets, and public discussions. The printing press made it possible for new thoughts to reach people across Europe and beyond. As literacy increased, more people could participate in debates about politics, religion, and society. The Enlightenment encouraged the belief that individuals had the ability to think for themselves, and that knowledge should be available to everyone, not just the privileged. The Enlightenment also influenced the relationship between religion and government. Many thinkers believed that faith should be sincere and personal, not enforced by political power. They argued that people should be free to worship according to their own conscience. This idea encouraged a more thoughtful and voluntary approach to belief. It also laid the foundation for the principle of religious freedom that would later become central to the American experience. The Enlightenment matters because it reshaped the way people understood themselves and their place in the world. It introduced ideas about liberty, equality, and the rights of individuals that would influence revolutions in America and France. It encouraged scientific progress, expanded education, and promoted the belief that societies could improve through reason and cooperation. These ideas would help shape the founding documents of the United States and guide the development of modern democratic governments. This period of new thinking did not solve every problem, nor did it eliminate conflict, but it changed the direction of history.
It prepared the world for new political experiments, new freedoms, and new possibilities. And it set the stage for the next turning point in our story: the age of exploration and the expansion of European influence across the world.
Chapter 7. The Age of Exploration. By the 15th century, Europe was changing rapidly. The Renaissance had revived learning. The Reformation had stirred religious debate, and the Enlightenment was beginning to shape new ideas about knowledge and society. These movements encouraged curiosity and a desire to understand the wider world. At the same time, trade routes to Asia were controlled by powerful empires, making goods like spices, silk, and precious metals difficult. And expensive to obtain, European nations began searching for new paths across the seas. Portugal led the way. Its sailors explored the coast of Africa, mapping new territories and learning how to navigate the open ocean. Their voyages were slow and cautious, but each journey pushed the boundaries of what was known. Spain soon followed, driven by the hope of finding a direct route to Asia in 1492. Christopher Columbus sailed west across the Atlantic, believing he would reach the east. Instead, he encountered lands unknown to Europe. His voyage marked the beginning of sustained contact between Europe and the Americas. These encounters changed the world. European explorers brought new plants, animals, and technologies to the Americas, and carried American crops like corn and potatoes back to Europe. This exchange reshaped diets, economies, and populations on both sides of the ocean. But the age of exploration also brought hardship. Diseases carried by Europeans devastated indigenous populations who had no immunity. Colonization disrupted cultures, displaced communities, and created conflicts that would last for centuries. Despite these challenges, exploration continued. Spain established vast territories in Central and South America. Portugal built colonies in Brazil. And along the coasts of Africa and Asia, France explored parts of Canada and the Mississippi River. England, though slower to begin, eventually established colonies along the eastern coast of North America. These settlements were small at first, but they grew steadily as people sought new opportunities, religious freedom, or a fresh start. The English colonies developed their own identities. They built towns, farms, and trading networks. They formed local governments and assemblies, often out of necessity. Life in the colonies required cooperation and self-reliance. Over time, these communities grew more confident in managing their own affairs. They were still loyal to England, but they were also learning to govern themselves. The age of exploration matters because it connected the world in ways that had never been possible before. It brought different cultures into contact, sometimes peacefully and sometimes through conflict. It expanded trade, encouraged migration, reshaped the global economy. Most importantly for our story, it laid the foundation for the English colonies that would one day become the United States. This period did not create freedom or democracy on its own, but it created the conditions where new ideas could take root. It set the stage for the next turning point in our story: the rise of colonial identity, the struggle for independence, and the birth of a new nation. Chapter 8. The Road to Independence. By the 18th century, the English colonies in North America had grown from small settlements into thriving communities. They were still part of the British Empire, but life in the colonies was different from life in England. The land was wide, opportunities were plentiful, and people often relied on their own judgment to solve problems. This encouraged independence of thought and a sense of responsibility for local affairs. Most colonies had their own assemblies, elected by local residents. These assemblies made laws, managed budgets, and handled disputes. They were not fully independent, but they gave colonists experience in self-government. Over time, many colonists came to believe that government worked governed. It was close to the people it served. The Enlightenment also influenced colonial thinking. Ideas about natural rights, liberty, and the purpose of government spread through books, pamphlets, and public discussions. Colonists read the works of thinkers like John Locke and debated how these ideas applied to their own lives. They believed that government existed to protect the rights of individuals and that authority should be limited by law. For many years, the relationship between the colonies and Britain remained stable. The colonists traded goods, followed British laws, and saw themselves as loyal subjects. But this balance began to shift after the French and Indian War. The war had been costly, and Britain looked to the colonies to help pay the expenses. New taxes and regulations were introduced, and many colonists felt they were being asked to bear burdens without having a voice in the decisions. The phrase, "no taxation without representation," captured their frustration. Colonists believed that if they were expected to follow British laws, they should have a say in how those laws were made. Britain, however, saw the colonies as part of the empire and believed Parliament had the right to govern them. This disagreement grew into a larger debate about the nature of authority and the rights of individuals. Tensions increased as Britain passed new laws to assert control, and colonists organized protests and boycotts in response. Some leaders called for compromise, while others argued that the colonies needed greater freedom. Events like the Boston Tea Party and the closing of Boston's port deepened the divide. What began as a dispute over taxes became a question of identity. Were the colonists simply subjects of the British Crown, or were they something more? By the mid-1770s, many colonists believed that their rights were being threatened. They formed committees, held meetings, and gathered in the Continental Congress to discuss their future. They did not seek conflict, but they were determined to defend the principles they believed in. When fighting broke out at Lexington and Concord, the colonies found themselves on a path they had not expected. The road to independence was not a sudden decision. It was the result of years of changing ideas, growing confidence, and increasing tension. The colonists had developed their own identity, shaped by self-government, Enlightenment thought, and life in a new land. They believed that freedom was worth defending, and that government should serve the people, not rule over them. This chapter matters because it explains how ordinary people, living far from the centers of power, came to believe they could shape their own destiny. It sets the stage for the next turning point in our story: the Declaration of Independence and the birth of a new nation.
Chapter 9. The Declaration and the Birth of a Nation. By 1776, the tension between the American colonies and Britain had reached a point where compromise seemed unlikely. The colonies had spent years debating their rights, organizing assemblies, and resisting laws they believed were unfair. They still hoped for reconciliation, but each new attempt only widened the divide. When fighting broke out in Massachusetts, it became clear that the conflict was no longer just about taxes. It was about the nature of government and the rights of individuals. The Continental Congress gathered in Philadelphia to decide what should be done. Delegates from the 13 colonies brought different backgrounds and opinions. Some believed independence was necessary. Others hoped for a peaceful settlement. But as the conflict continued, more leaders came to believe that the colonies needed to define their own future. They understood that remaining tied to Britain meant accepting a system that did not recognize their rights. In June of 1776, the Congress appointed a committee to draft a statement explaining why the colonies felt compelled to separate. Thomas Jefferson, known for his clear writing and thoughtful ideas, prepared the first draft. He drew on Enlightenment principles, colonial experience, and long-standing beliefs about natural rights. The document he produced was revised by the committee and debated by the Congress, but its central message remained the same. The Declaration of Independence stated that all people have certain rights that come from their creator, not from governments. It argued that governments exist to protect those rights, and that when a government fails to do so, the people have the authority to change it.
These ideas were not new, but the Declaration expressed them in a way that was direct and compelling. It listed the grievances the colonies had against the British Crown and explained why they believed separation was necessary. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress approved the Declaration. The colonies now saw themselves as a new nation. This decision did not end the conflict. It marked the beginning of a long and difficult struggle. The colonies faced one of the most powerful empires in the world, and victory was far from certain. But the Declaration gave them a clear purpose. It united them around shared principles and provided a vision of the kind of nation they hoped to build. The Declaration of Independence matters because it defined the values that would guide the United States. It emphasized the importance of individual rights, the rule of law, and the belief that government should serve the people. These ideas would influence the Constitution, shape political debates, and inspire movements for greater freedom throughout American history. The birth of the United States was not just a political event. It was the result of centuries of ideas, struggles, and turning points. It grew out of the English tradition of limited government, the Enlightenment belief in reason and rights, and the colonial experience of self-government. The Declaration brought these influences together and set the foundation for a new nation. This chapter marks the moment when the colonies stepped onto the world stage as an independent people. It sets the stage for the next turning point in our story. The creation of a government strong enough to survive, yet limited enough to protect the freedoms the new nation had fought to secure.
Chapter 10. The Constitution and the Shape of a New Government. The American colonies had declared independence, but winning it was another matter. They faced a long war against one of the strongest empires in the world. Victory did not come easily. It required sacrifice, determination, and the belief that their cause was just. Many Americans felt that God had guided and protected them through the struggle. Whatever one's interpretation, the outcome was remarkable. A small collection of colonies secured their freedom and stood ready to build a nation of their own. When the war ended, the new United States needed a government strong enough to hold the country together, yet limited enough to protect the freedoms they had fought to secure. The first attempt, the Articles of Confederation, created a loose union of states but lacked the authority to solve national problems. Trade disputes, financial instability, and regional tensions made it clear that something stronger was needed. In 1787, delegates from the states met in Philadelphia to create a new framework. They brought different ideas, different priorities, and different fears. Some wanted a strong central government. Others worried that too much power would threaten liberty. The Constitution that emerged was the result of careful debate and practical compromise. It created 3 branches of government, balanced their powers, and established a system that could adapt over time. The Constitution was not perfect. It reflected the limits and disagreements of its time. But it was the best document the delegates could create, and it has proven remarkably durable. It established the rule of law, protected individual rights, and created a structure that allowed the nation to grow, change, and correct its mistakes. Many Americans believe that God's hand helped guide its creation. Others see it as a product of human wisdom and experience. Either way, it became the foundation of a new nation. The Constitution matters because it turned the ideals of the Declaration into a working system of government. It balanced freedom with order, authority with accountability, and national unity with local independence. It provided a framework that has endured through wars, crises, and social change. And it set the stage for the next turning point in our story. The expansion of the young nation and the challenges that would come with growth. Chapter 11. The Early Republic.
When the Constitution was approved, the United States had a framework, but it did not yet have a functioning government. The new nation needed leaders who could turn written principles into daily practice. George Washington became the first president, and his administration set many of the traditions that future leaders would follow. He approached the office with caution, aware that every decision would shape the expectations of the generations to come. The early years of the Republic were filled with challenges. The nation faced debt from the Revolutionary War, disputes over state and federal authority, and questions about how to interpret the Constitution. Leaders debated how strong the central government should be, how to manage the economy, and how to maintain unity amongst states with different interests. These debates were often intense, but they were part of the process of learning how a constitutional government should function. Foreign affairs added to the difficulty. European powers watched the young nation closely, and conflicts overseas threatened to pull America into wars. It was not prepared to fight. Washington and other early leaders believed the country needed time to grow stronger before becoming involved in foreign struggles. Their cautious approach helped the nation avoid conflicts that could have weakened it in its earliest years. Despite the challenges, the new government proved that the Constitution could work. Elections were held peacefully, laws were passed and enforced. Disagreements were handled through debate rather than force. The system was not perfect, but it showed that a nation could be governed by principles rather than by the will of a single ruler. The early republic also saw the beginning of political parties. Leaders who once worked side by side found themselves divided by different visions for the country. Some favored a strong national government, others believed power should remain closer to the states. These disagreements created tension, but they also demonstrated that the Constitution allowed for open debate and differing opinions. The early republic matters because it tested the ideas that had been written on paper. It showed that a government built on law, elections, and balanced powers could survive real-world challenges. It proved that the Constitution was not just a document, but a living system that could guide a nation through uncertainty. These first decades did not solve every problem, but they established a foundation. They showed that the United States could govern itself, correct its course, and grow stronger over time. And they set the stage for the next turning point in our story: the rise of religious freedom in America.
When the United States was formed, it created something rare in the history of the world. For centuries, most nations had an official church supported by the government. In many places, people were expected to follow the religion of their rulers. Some governments allowed limited tolerance, but true freedom of conscience was uncommon. The American founders chose a different path. The First Amendment to the Constitution stated that Congress could not establish a national religion or prevent people from worshiping according to their own beliefs. This principle did not appear suddenly. It grew out of long experience. Many early settlers had come to America seeking relief from religious pressure in Europe. They wanted the freedom to worship without interference. Their experiences shaped the political thinking of the colonies and influenced the debates that led to the Constitution. The Constitution did not call for a separation of religion from public life. It simply prevented the government from controlling belief. The First Amendment forbade Congress from establishing a national church and from interfering with personal worship. Many of the founders quoted scripture and believed that faith was essential to the character of the nation. Their goal was not to remove religion from society, but to protect it from political power. This new approach changed the character of American life. Without an official church, religious groups had to rely on persuasion rather than authority. Ministers preached, communities organized, and individuals chose their own paths. Competition among denominations encouraged energy, creativity, and personal commitment.
Religion became a matter of personal conviction rather than inherited tradition. People were free to ask questions, explore different beliefs, and seek answers for themselves. This environment was unlike anything in Europe at the time. It allowed new ideas to take root and gave individuals the confidence to act on their own spiritual experiences. Faith became something people embraced because they believed it, not because the law required it. The rise of religious freedom matters because it created the world in which the events of 1820 and 1830 could occur. A young man could walk into the woods and pray without fear of punishment. A new church could be organized without government interference. The principles written into the Constitution made these moments possible. They were the culmination of centuries of change and the beginning of a new chapter in the story of faith. This chapter sets the stage for the next turning point, the spiritual awakening that swept across America and prepared the hearts of many for something new.
By the early 19th century, the United States had become a nation where people were free to worship according to their own beliefs. Without a national church and without government control over religion, Americans explored faith in ways that were new to the world. This freedom created an environment where spiritual searching became common, and where religious movements could grow based on conviction rather than law. In this setting, a wave of renewed religious interest swept across the country. Historians call it the Second Great Awakening. It was not a single event, but a widespread movement that touched cities, towns, and frontier settlements. Ministers traveled from place to place, preaching in homes, meeting houses, and open fields. Large gatherings, often called camp meetings, drew people from miles around. Families camped for days as they listened to sermons, sang hymns, and reflected on their lives. The movement encouraged personal responsibility in matters of faith. People were taught that they could seek forgiveness, change their lives, and build a direct relationship with God. This message resonated with a nation that valued independence and self-reliance. It also appealed to communities on the frontier, where formal churches were scarce, and people relied on their own efforts to build their lives. The Second Great Awakening led to the growth of many denominations. Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, and others expanded. Rapidly, new religious groups formed as individuals studied scripture and shared their interpretations. The absence of government control meant that people were free to organize congregations, preach new ideas, and follow the beliefs that spoke to them. Religion became a vibrant and diverse part of American culture. This period also encouraged moral and social reform. Many believed that faith should influence daily life and improve society. Movements for education, temperance, and humanitarian causes gained strength. People felt a sense of purpose and believed they could help shape the future of their communities and their nation. The spiritual energy of the Second Great Awakening was especially strong in parts of New York and the surrounding regions. The area became known for its intense religious activity, with many preachers, revivals, and competing denominations. Some called it the burned-over district, suggesting that the fires of revival had passed through so often that the region was constantly stirred by spiritual questions. This environment matters because it created a world where individuals felt encouraged to seek personal answers from God. People were surrounded by competing beliefs, active debates, and sincere efforts to understand truth. It was a time when ordinary men and women believed that God could speak to them directly, and that they had the right to ask for guidance. The Second Great Awakening prepared the way for the events of 1820. It created a culture where a young man could wonder which church was right, where he could study the Bible for himself, and where he could pray openly without fear. It set the stage for a moment that would shape the course of religious history in America. This chapter leads naturally to the next turning point in our story. The quiet morning when a boy walked into the woods seeking wisdom, trusting that God would hear his prayer.
By 1820, the United States had become a nation unlike any other in the world. Its constitution protected the right to worship freely. Its people were accustomed to choosing their own beliefs, and the spiritual energy of the Second Great Awakening had stirred hearts across the country. In this environment, questions of faith were not unusual, they were part of daily life. In upstate New York, religious activity was especially intense. Ministers preached in homes, barns, and open fields. New denominations formed, each confident in its interpretation of Scripture. Families discussed sermons, attended revivals, and searched the Bible for guidance. The region was filled with sincere people trying to understand God's will. But the abundance of voices also created confusion. Many wondered which church taught the truth. Among those who felt this confusion was a young man living in a small farming community. He listened to the debates around him and saw the divisions among neighbors and friends. Each group claimed to follow the teachings of Christ, yet they disagreed on important points. He wanted to know which path he should follow. He believed that God would not leave sincere seekers without guidance. The Bible offered him a simple invitation to ask God for wisdom. It was a message that fit perfectly within the spirit of the age. Americans believed they had the right to seek truth for themselves. They believed that God listened to personal prayers, and they lived in a nation where no government or church authority could punish someone for asking questions. With this confidence, the young man decided to act. He chose a quiet place in the woods near his home, a place where he could speak to God without interruption. It was a simple decision, but it reflected centuries of change. In earlier times, such a prayer might have been discouraged or even forbidden. But in America, in 1820, it was both possible and natural. On a spring morning, he entered the grove and knelt to pray. He asked the question that had troubled him: which church should he join? He expected an answer, because he believed that God cared about the concerns of ordinary people. What happened next would shape the course of his life and influence the history of faith in America. He did receive an answer. But when he shared his experience, the local ministers accused him of lying. They dismissed his words and questioned his motives, yet he could not deny what had happened. He later explained that he knew he had received an answer, and God knew he had received an answer. With that certainty, he felt bound to the truth. To deny it would have been to deny God himself. This moment matters because it represents the meeting of personal faith and historical preparation. The prayer of a single boy was made possible by the freedoms established in the Constitution, the spiritual searching encouraged by the Second Great Awakening, and the long tradition of individuals seeking truth for themselves. It was a quiet act, but it grew from a world that had been prepared over centuries. This chapter leads directly to the next turning point in our story: the events of 1830, when a new church was organized in a nation where such a step could be taken without fear. The years following the young man's prayer were filled with learning, reflection, and quiet preparation. He continued to seek guidance, trusting that God would reveal things in his own time. The world around him was changing as well. America was growing. New communities were forming. and the spirit of religious searching remained strong. It was a nation where people were free to follow their convictions, even when those convictions differed from tradition. During this period, the young man shared his experiences with a few trusted individuals. Some believed him, others questioned him. But he remained steady. He knew what he had seen and heard, and he trusted that God would guide the next steps. Over time, he received further instruction, including the command to translate a record that spoke of ancient people who had lived on the American continent. This work required patience, faith, and the help of others who felt moved to assist. As the translation progressed, interest grew among friends and neighbors. Some were curious, some were skeptical. But a small group felt that something important was happening. They studied the teachings, prayed for understanding, and felt a desire to be part of the work. Their interest was voluntary, sincere, and rooted in the freedom that America offered. The freedom to choose one's own path. By 1830, the time had come to take a formal step. On April 6, a small gathering met in a modest home in upstate New York. There was no grand ceremony, no political endorsement, and no government involvement. It was a simple meeting of believers who felt called to organize a church based on the teachings they had received. They acted within the rights protected by the Constitution, rights that allowed them to worship, to assemble, and to establish a religious society without fear. The organization of the church was quiet compared to the great events of world history, yet it marked the beginning of something new. It represented the continuation of a pattern that had unfolded over centuries. Individuals seeking truth, receiving guidance, and acting on their convictions. It also reflected the unique environment of the United States, where faith could grow without interference from political power. The early members faced challenges. Some neighbors questioned their beliefs, others opposed them openly, but the small group remained committed. They believed that God had called them to build something that would bless future generations. Their work was humble, but it was grounded in faith and strengthened by the freedoms their nation provided. The events of 1830 matter because they show how personal revelation and public action can come together in a society that honors agency. A new church could not have been organized in many parts of the world at that time. But in America, where government intervention in religion was forbidden, individuals were free to follow the direction they believed came from God. This chapter marks the beginning of a new phase in the story, one that will grow, spread, and face trials. But it all began with a small group of believers acting on their convictions in a land prepared by centuries of change. Throughout history, small decisions and great events shaped the world in ways no one could have predicted. Had Rome not embraced Christianity, had the empire not fallen, had William the Conqueror lost his battle, or had any number of later events unfolded differently, the United States might never have existed. And without the freedoms protected in its Constitution, the religious liberty of 1820 and 1830 would not have been possible. History prepared the way, step by step, for a moment when individuals could seek truth without fear. But all of these things did happen when they were needed and how they were needed. Other events, many of which I have not spoken of, also unfolded at the right time, to me. This shows the quiet working of the hand of God. A little nudge here, a gentle pull there. And in every age, it is up to us to accept His guidance. He never forces, He invites. And we are free to choose. Freedom has always required guardians in every age. There are voices that would limit it, and others who rise to defend it. Today, many churches and people of faith stand together to preserve the very liberties that allow each of us to worship, or not worship, according to our own conscience. The story of freedom is not finished. It continues with us.
For those who wish to learn more about the church organized in 1830, information is available through the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As with all matters of faith, the choice to explore further belongs entirely to the individual. Thanks to the freedoms